All right, it's 7 o'clock and I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'm not seeing any public, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 participants. Josh, do you see any public or are you expecting any public?
No, I'm not I'm sorry. I should say I'm expecting Arlene Fiano. She did request the link to the meeting so that she could see some of the Yukon plans that we'll discuss later. Nick Levine, I know, is here from CBC, and thank you for broadcasting this on CBC's website, Nick. And of course, Yvonne's here to take the minutes. But besides that, I'm not aware of any public that's.
Okay, thank you. I should have said Happy New Year to all. I apologize for that. Happy New Year, all.
Hey, Happy New Year.
I'm hoping that
2021
improves every day, but I have yet to see that happen. Next item on the agenda is approval of our minutes of December 1st, 2020. Josh, were you able to reach out to Yvonne about my concern about these minutes?
I wasn't, but Yvonne, we can touch base about it after. Yvonne, I think we were both hoping that anytime that staff is referenced as a title, if we could break it out so that it's either by last name or by first initial and last name. I know that there are some times where other staff members are on the call, and it gets confusing if it's just staff as a blank term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that staff usually refers to you, Joshua, because that's how you were listed in the roll call. But I can get rid of that and just do last name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, especially in the cases I expect in some future meetings, we will have other staff members who join us. And I think it would be a lot easier as we get into budget season to be able to determine who's there. And Jill Collins, who is staff, was also present at that meeting. And I think some of the comments attributed to staff were actually made by her. But I don't expect you to go back and fix these minutes, but going forward, could we just use the first initial last name, or since everybody else is referred to by last name and we only have one Kelly, that would be fine.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're
Unless
welcome.
Barbara needs to show up for a meeting. But
I'm sorry.
I said unless Barbara needs to show up for a meeting.
Oh, that's true.
Happens
And
too
then
often.
we'll need we do have 2 Kellys on staff. Thank you for that clarification. I had totally forgotten. Any other additions or corrections to these minutes?
Yeah, I didn't read them that carefully, but when I did read, I'll move we accept as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. So it's been moved by Bob Morris, seconded by Mike Aramita. Any other discussion? All those in favor of acceptance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That vote was unanimous. Moving on to appointments. Our sole appointment, I believe this time, is to add Josh, Patrice Carson, and myself to the 4-Town Economic Vitality Steering Committee for a 2-year term ending June 30th, 2022. There may be others who are volunteering to serve on either subcommittees of the steering committee, and we will reach out and appoint those as the opportunities arise. But at this point, we're just establishing the steering committee.
Do we need a motion to approve that?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Moved by Mike Aramita, seconded by Kim Miller. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bob DiPietro, was that an aye?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Correspondence. Didn't see any, Josh.
I don't have any major correspondence to share, no.
Okay. Reports and updates, subcommittee reports. We have,
We had all three subcommittees actually meet since the last full board meeting. So I know that not everybody was able to attend all of the meetings, but all of the minutes are available, of course, on our website, but also within this packet if you want to go through on your own. The Facilities and Public Safety Subcommittee met just yesterday and discussed the review of town hall facility expansion, conducted a review of town hall facility expansion, proposed initial designs by UConn students, which we'll discuss later. And another item regarding speed sensing signs that will also be discussed later in today's meeting. Sorry, Sandy, I hope it's okay that I'm just recapping these.
no, by all means. Skylar, is that you at 0321?
Yep, it is.
Thank you. Just
No
wanted
problem.
to make sure we weren't missing a member of the public.
Nope, no worries.
Okay, thank you. Moving, so that I don't believe the properties and facilities report is in there. There's a finance and administration report in there and an HR subcommittee minutes in there, and we will be moving on. HR is meeting again on Friday at noon to discuss some of the items in that report that were a carryover. So, and all of the action items that are coming out of that subcommittee are down under new business. So I'm going to move on. I don't believe we have anything under open space management. Is that
No.
correct, Josh?
We do not, and I also don't have a properties and facilities report either.
Okay. I do have something to add under properties and facilities.
Okay.
The Heritage Farm Commission has approved another Eagle project for the farm. This one will be completed by Eagle candidate Joseph Griffin, who is proposing to put several, and I'm thinking it's 6 or 8 kiosks, wooden kiosks up at various locations on the farm to identify some flora and fauna and historical areas of the farm. They'll be made out of wood, covered with plexiglass, with the items below that. And this work is being done under the supervision of John Butramovich and the Heritage Farm Commission. But I've seen the plans from Joe, and as soon as we get the Eagle approval from the Eagle Committee, I'll be having Josh add that up on the town website so everybody's aware of what's going on there. And that's a continuing Eagle project. Well, a continuing of the long list of Eagle projects that have happened at the farm. So we're very grateful to Troop 73. All right, budget report, Josh.
Absolutely. So the first half of this report, I'll share with you the tax collector's report. Please note that this actually is different, I believe, from the last time that we met. I haven't had the chance to get the December 31st numbers, given that we've only had a couple days here at the beginning of January. But these are the November numbers as they stood. We were at a total of 98.3% collected, which, considering the circumstances, I think is pretty good. And considering the fact that the supplemental motor vehicle is only gone out now. So that will continue to tick upwards. And I will, as soon as I have January numbers, I can send that out to the board directly for your review.
I just want to make a comment here that the governor issued a supplemental executive order in very late December after our supplemental bills had gone out that said we had unless we took action to opt out, our supplemental motor vehicle bills would also have a 3-month no interest deferral. And we did not opt out. So the interest and fees on the supplemental motor vehicles that are paid by, they're due in January, February, March, by April 1st will be waived. So when I spoke to the tax collector about that, she said that she wasn't concerned that the tax receipts were coming in well, but that she felt we should continue with the deferral. So, and since it's only $175,000, I think that we had budgeted there, the interest amount that's being waived is rather small. So,
Are there other questions on collections? Seeing none, then I will move right along. To the expenditure report, which also looks similar to last month's.
I do see it. Oh,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah,
there it
sorry.
is.
I had to finagle with it just a little bit. So as you might remember, there were 2 lines in November that were a little bit over our typical expenditure range. And those were the land use department and the elections office. Elections, of course, given the sheer amount of prep that they had to do for a presidential election and given the amount of PPE that they had to acquire. And in the land use office, there are a number of factors that play into this line. Most notably, perhaps our director of community development spent quite a bit of time making sure in the first half of this year that we had our sustainable CT application in on time and used a number for hours up front that are often spread more evenly throughout the year. That's led to very small overages in these departments. And since we're halfway through the year, what you're looking for as you go through the percent expensed column is 50%. So these are highlighted in yellow because they're both over 50% and over the amount that they have been expensed in the past 3 years. You'll note, of course, though, that this is a 3-year look back. So the last elections or the current year elections is not actually being compared to another presidential year. And I believe that if you take a look at that next year back, you'd find that there are some pretty clear similarities in the way that they're being expensed. Besides those 2 lines that I continuing to monitor, everything else is in great shape. And overall, we are underexpended on the whole by a couple of percentage points at this point in the year. And of course, we're continuing to be as conservative as we can be while still moving projects forward and making sure that things are happening. But we're being very conscious about the way in which we're pursuing those projects and making sure that anything that we can wait just a little bit longer on, just in case we need some money for other unforeseen expenses related to COVID-19, that money is available as long as possible. Are there any questions on this expenditure report? This is current as of December 31st.
No.
Okay. Very good.
And I believe we have one budget transfer.
And it is for our tax collector's office. As a result of just the sheer fact that there have been a number of reminders that have been sent out in the press and so on, the tax office has been a little bit more expensed this year in certain areas and in certain ways than it has been in the past. And in this case, the advertising line needs just a little bit more money to make sure that it's going to have enough for the advertising that it needs to do about the deferrals. So Lori has requested that we transfer $127.91 from the professional educational training line to the advertising line. And all of our professional educational training lines are a little under expense this year as a result of not a lot happening in person. So this is a pretty safe place to take this money from.
Mhm. Only a treasurer would bring it down to the penny.
Tax collector.
Or tax collector, rather, sorry. Yeah. I'll move the transfer.
Thank you. It's been moved by Bob Mora. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. It's been seconded by Mike Aramita. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is, Kim, was that an aye from you?
Yes, sorry. Mute, unmute.
That's okay. That is unanimous. Thank you. And I don't believe we have any other here under continuing business. Let's move on to new business. The creation of an ad hoc diversity council following the demonstration and the for the George Floyd killing and the rally on the green. I held this Facebook Live session that I think I've talked to you before, and one of them was, one of the discussions that came out of there was the establishment of a diversity council of committee, oh boy, that would focus on diversity and inclusion. And we ran that thought by the Sustainable Connecticut Committee. They were in support, and at the Finance and Administration Subcommittee meeting on December 21st, we also discussed it, and the recommendation of that committee was to create an ad hoc committee in the same vein as the town of Ellington's, convene for a trial period of 1 year and then potentially become more permanent if in fact that becomes productive. And Josh has put together some information here on other towns, areas, diversity councils.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, this is a general question, because I read over your minutes and the resolution, but I guess I want to understand what's the ultimate goal of this, of the, what are we looking to do? I look at it, personally, I'm looking at it two different things. One, as a government, as a town government, I think we are bound, both by law and also by, I think, ethics, to be very conscious of all these factors. And as a government, we in fact should be looking at all of these things and looking at ways that we can either, or look at things that we may not be dealing with and may not be addressing, as noted in the resolution. What I'm not sure is, where are we going on beyond that? Is this committee wanting to set up a bunch of rules for our citizens to go by, or suggesting? I'm not quite sure. I don't feel comfortable yet as to where this thing is going. Let's put it that way. I have no problems with it on the governmental side. I have a lot of problem with it on the individual side.
I'm not sure I'm understanding you, Bob. I agree with you that we are bound by state and federal laws on certain of these items, but what I heard from community members is that we are not aware or focused on our I guess the best way to put it is unidentified biases.
Mm-hmm.
I did some diversity training, and we'd have some diversity training set up for town supervisors and the Board of Selectmen. But some of the stuff I did made me realize that I have some personal unconscious biases that arise from my upbringing and my social status. So I'm not looking for this committee to come up and say Bolton needs to adopt rules or regulations, but I'm looking for this committee to help us understand as a larger community some of those biases or diversity and inclusion steps that we can take as individuals and make us a more inclusive community.
Okay. I guess I see where your intent is. I feel that if we, the Board of Selectmen, is just something that we're doing, I think it should be really geared towards the governmental side, what we as a community government side, because all these issues run through all various segments of our government, zoning, the regulations that we adopt as a board, and how we address it and how we deal with it, and frankly, even how we as a town government deal with our citizenry. So, yeah, everything you have here, I think, is critical to be looked at in that manner. Overall, on the community basis, well, I don't know if that's government's job or is that part of our religious organizations job, or I'm not sure. That part just leaves me out there in the cold. I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're going from, and you're right. There were people who felt that, yeah, there are members of the community, as we all are. There's nobody out there today who doesn't have some prejudices. I mean, I don't care what side, where you are. That's just part of our nature. It's how we deal with this with our fellow man is what is important. And I don't know, as we as a government can do a lot about that. I think we as an individuals can do a hell of a lot about it. I would be more attuned to maybe having a small group meeting with certain organizations that now I harken back to religious organizations because they, most of that deals with a lot of social issues, but whomever in discussing that, when I read over what was our resolution, I felt it was too broad and too open-ended. If the board is insistent on adopting this, and I'm not particularly in favor of adopting it this way, I think it should be mirrored more towards government than as far as on this than as just an open-ended in its, because we're talking about a membership of a group that can be anywhere from 5 to 50, not targeting, to at least something like this should at least include your religious leaders. It should at least include a lot of leaders of your social clubs, like women's clubs, Knights of Columbus, organization like that, who are, that's part of their calling is working with people and helping with people. And I don't see that here.
Well, I have to tell you that the people who have reached out to me to volunteer are people who are either what the state of Connecticut would define as a minority, or a professional whose vocation it is to service that group on a larger scale.
Mhm.
And I think we are, by focusing on government, I think we're missing an opportunity as a community for community education. Because I think I'm going to speak about myself here. I carry my biases with me every day. And I believe that other people I interact with carry their biases with them as well. But if somehow or other somebody can educate me that, one, I have them, which is happening, or two, how to deal with them so I don't offend others by my actions, totally out of habit or character, that there's a better way for me to deal with my presentation and dealing with others. I think we've accomplished what my goal is here. And I think the only way to start that is to give the group some ground rules that say, we want you to focus on Bolton and we want you to focus on identification and education. And if you want to spend time doing something else, please do so, but just understand that you've got a year. So I know it's working in Ellington, it's working in some other towns, so.
And was the thought that they would actually implement something from this, or that they would bring their ideas to us
No,
and we would?
they would report to us and bring any ideas to us for approval and implementation.
Okay, that's what I thought.
They would purely be an advisory group to us.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is, focus on Bolton, focus on the community, and come up with ideas, and hope that, the 10 people that decide to join are some pretty creative people and come up with things that we wouldn't even have thought of, right? We're not bound to do anything. I don't think anyone's saying we're going to put guidelines in. It's purely, and one of the things that popped into my head was, we've had situations or whatever that occur in Bolton. And if someone even just collected the, good sources of information, if someone wanted to learn more, maybe we, just have something that points them in that right direction, or, I don't know. I don't see an issue. Do you have a concern, Bob, with them doing it that I'm missing?
Mike, I guess my concern is really it's a philosophical concern as to whose job is that? Is it government's job or isn't it government's job? That's really where it gets down to. It's government's job to make sure that you as a community, its government and all its people that operate there, are comply and not only comply with the rules. I mean, you can comply with the rules and be a complete ass, but comply with the rules and be that sensitive individuals, not like sometimes I'm not, but be that sensitive person dealing with these various issues. That to me is critically important. It should always be a part. And we should always step back and look and really re-examine ourselves and how we're doing in this and that. I think in that regards, 100% behind it. Whether or not we are the body to have our, I don't know, our citizenry
It's a very difficult situation and a difficult thing to get your head around. And I think what Bob may be talking about is it's like trying to legislate common sense. You can't do that.
Thank you.
There's no way to do something like that. I think that if this, I think one of the best ways that we can show the community what this is all about is for us to set an example. And, you know, in the way we act, in the way we conduct business, in the way we interview, in the way we advertise for jobs and everything else, and try to recruit people for committees and everything. I think that's our job, to set that type of example. I think this committee might be able to assist us in some of those self-realizations or governmental realizations that we might not be doing a good job in one place or another. You know, as far as eventually legislating over the community, you know, a lot of those laws already exist, you know, as far as discrimination and everything. We all know that everybody has a right to be an idiot, as Bob called, you know, everybody's got a right to be prejudiced, to be an ass.
Right.
Yeah, but nobody has a right to discriminate. There's, you know, I know people who are totally prejudiced but never show discrimination, and you're never going to change that in them, but they don't discriminate. And, you know, our job is to show the better side of mankind, I guess, and be an example for our community. And if this helps us be a better example, then I'm in favor of it.
So then, thank you, Mike. Yeah, you clarified my scrambled thoughts. So maybe this could be addressed in some of the language in the resolution itself. In one area, there's a couple of little things that I pointed down, but in one area, I'll go down to the area on the last paragraph where it's in the creation, similar to Ellington, that says that to create its own agenda. And Mike spoke about some very specific things about having that committee be able to come back with the board and to make suggestions on the board or the governments of the town could be, you know, better in dealing with these various issues, diversity issue, inclusion issues. If instead of leaving it quite that wide open, if we're going that way, then let's at least make that part of what you're looking to do. I feel much better to give that direction rather than just having it just go off and end up not accomplishing what I think you want to have accomplished. You know, giving at least some basic directions, at least a part of what you're going to do. Sandy, you mentioned that they could go in one direction. If they want to go somewhere else, it's fine. But I think we should at least give them that direction of, if you're going to, let's take a look at what we do, how our government does things here, and you know, give us. It's hard, like anybody else, it's hard to look at yourself and see what you're not seeing. If you have somebody else looking at it, they're going to see that. And I absolutely see nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good idea. And so I think that should be very much a part of whatever resolution that's there, that be a part of whatever group you do it. My second suggestion, now I'm going forward to the resolution portion. I think you ought to put a limit on size, and you know, up to, I'm not sure what the number would be, but if it gets too big, it's just going to be too cumbersome, and that tends to come when you start mixing too much into the pot. You get nothing but a blend of nothing, rather than dealing with issues. And we've all been on various boards. I think we can all feel that way. And if I had a couple of other suggestions, and just a simple minor word, it's going down. And well, if may, I can just continue.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. The third paragraph, whereas the Board of Selectmen recognizes that it says the town can do more to address issues on diversity I think it's the town government can do more. If that's what we're looking at, if you want to use that term, or do you want to say
No,
town as a whole?
I don't, I disagree with adding government here because
You're looking at the town as a whole?
I'm looking at the town as a group of 4,890 plus people.
Okay, okay, all right. And forget that. And the next paragraph, whereas the town recognizes, and I said that it may not be fully aware of all issues.
That's fine. I have no problem with that change.
Some are and some aren't. And the rest of the wording it follows that same line of thought. And requires. Oh yeah, and let's see, and the next sentence down, may arise within Bolton in any given year. It may require residents' help and input in order to be able to address issues.
I'm not sure where you are, Bob.
Paragraph 4.
Paragraph
Okay.
4, I am in the third sentence. And just added, again,
And may require, okay, that's fine. I don't have no
Right.
problem with that.
that's all that, and that's the rest of the, and there's another may, you go down the next paragraph, third sentence. And towards the end, it reads, and inclusion that may arise. That may arise. That just simply says,
I'm fine with that as well.
then that's it. Then and the I don't know how we can I think it's important we do give some guidance on the agenda side. I'm not sure how to do that. So I just put a question mark on that.
And I think it's important, at least for year one, that we allowed them to determine what it is that they see our community is lacking or needs to improve in. Because based on what I've heard to date, there may be some issues that are within town government, within resident interactions, within the Board of Education, and also within business that's located in Bolton, and also with our health and safety folks, public safety folks.
Well,
so
that's fine, but somewhere in there, I want to specify that they include the government, that is going to.
Oh, so perhaps shall be empowered to create its own agenda as it seeks to address issues pertaining to town government and community diversity and inclusion.
That works much better.
Okay.
Yeah. Sandy, when you say public safety, have there been any specific problems?
Allegations.
Really? Some that we should know about so we can deal with?
They are being dealt with the supervisors of those involved.
Okay. All right. That shocks me, but all of this unfortunately shocks me. It shocks me because it's not how I brought up my family, and it's not what I expected from my friends and neighbors. I don't expect this. It shocks me that we have to look at this in our community. Maybe I'm sitting with my head in the sand, but God, it shocks me that this is something that we haven't gone beyond in this community.
But Mike, I think it's a lot of not necessarily targeted at our community, but if you look at the world on a larger perspective and bring, there's a lot of, I'm going to use the term baggage, but it's not a good term.
It's an appropriate term, and
it travels, I think, with some of the minorities, and they may come to a community expecting certain types of treatment based on what their background is. And they may react differently than you and I would to a very similar circumstance.
Yeah, I know the world's got its head up its keister, and there are people that are people I would never in my wildest dreams want to associate with out there in the world. I just never expected it in our little piece of the of heaven here. You know what I'm getting at. I just, it floors me because I don't know. I probably got my head up my butt, not noticing it.
Mike, one of the things that had concerned me is the overall concept is a good concept. And the thing is based on my understanding of racism and other issues that we deal with, the difference in people, and but today some of that, it goes way beyond that. People are insulted if you use the wrong pronoun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, come on, folks. I'm sorry, I may be old school, but that if I'm considered a conservative pig because I don't use the right pronoun, I'm sorry, that's not me. Never has been, never will be. My family's as diverse as it comes. I've lived my life that way, and that's the only thing that's, if you will, scares me about that. Or how far does this go? Is it as I view it? My vision is one thing, but maybe that may not be what other people's vision of where we're going with this. I mean, I think living in a community where people have respect for each other is where I want to be. And
I would tell you there are some people who are local residents who don't believe we have that kind of a community.
Well,
it bothers me to hear that. Not bothers me like angry to hear it. It bothers me inside to feel that we have people in our community that feel that way. I feel bad about that, and because I never would have thought that, and well, I never would have wanted anybody in our community to feel that way, and I never thought that anybody in our community would have felt that way. But if it's true, then we got to fix it. And if it starts with us, then that's where it should start. And have them look at town government. If there's any way that we can do things better, then I'm all in favor of doing it better. And I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah, I think you said it right at the beginning, Mike. It is our job to set the standard. I mean, to by example,
yes,
not by a rule, but by example. And if the committee gets together and has suggestions for us, things that we should do, as we as a board feel like it is, it's appropriate, it helps in that way, that's fine. Then me, it's going in the right direction. My concern is this thing goes off on a tangent, and we're dealing with personal agenda issues rather than real diversity issues and inclusion issues. That's always been my concern on something like that. There's allowed to go, free will. And then if we don't address those issues, we're a bunch of bigots. And, we're not. And I know every member of this board. I don't know, you're not, and we're not. So I've said my piece.
Okay, the only thing that you brought up, Bob Morrow, was the, that we haven't addressed, I believe at this point, is limiting the number of people on the commission.
And I don't know what that should be, but I think we should have some sort of a limit.
Well, the one good thing about this is an ad hoc resolution, and if we say 25, which is an odd number,
Yeah.
And that would be my goal, and we find out that we get 33 great people who really want to serve, we can change that number.
Oh, you can't, okay. As ad hoc, you can modify.
This is a resolution. It's not,
Okay, that's right.
we
That's
can
all it is.
change any resolution at any meeting on a agenda. So I would propose that we shall set that in the last paragraph there shall consist of up to 25 members as are appointed by the Board of Selectmen, rather than as many. Got another number in mind, Mike?
I was thinking a more conservative number of like 15, only because you get 25 people in a room, and I'd be surprised if 25 people wanted to serve on this.
You get 5.
And you don't get anything done too in meetings that get that big.
You know,
I agree.
if it turns out to be something that mushrooms, then we can readdress it. But I think 15 is about as many as we can put in a room and have a civil conversation.
Okay.
You know, or at least an ability to talk once during a 2-hour period kind of thing.
I think you'll be lucky if you get 5.
No, I've already got 10.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. So let's change. I'm fine with the 15 because
We
I'm
can
treating
change.
this as a let's get started.
Right.
Yeah.
And since they're appointed by us, once we've passed this resolution, I'll be asking the folks who have reached out to me already to fill out the request for appointment forms, and then we can either interview them or have them come in and talk about their position at a future meeting.
I'd like to hear from them initially, personally, just because this bothers me so much that we could be, you know, I just, it surprises me we need that. It just bothers me.
Yeah, and so I'll just say one more thing. Bob just gave me a slight pause, and that pause was around his ending statement, which was something about, you know, if they make, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, if they make recommendations that we choose not to do, that puts us in a little bit of an awkward position, right? So I think the intent is good. And I'm not saying I don't want to, you know, move forward and see what comes up with it, but that just gave me a step back for a moment to think, because that then does open us up a little bit if we get recommendations that then become sort of a hot button in the community, and you're sort of, if you do it, you're wrong, and if you don't do it, you're wrong. But
Good point.
I'm willing to go forward.
I'm sitting here right now, Kim, trying to think of what they could come up with on the wildest stretch of the imagination that wouldn't be legit, you know, wouldn't be okay. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Just had, yeah, I totally hear you. And I think the intent, sorry, you finish.
No, you know, I agree with you. You know, when Bob said it upset, you know, it put a little pause in my brain too. But I'm sitting here trying to think of if it bothers somebody in our community and it's not something that's a personal thing that they should have to deal with on their own, meaning an internal thing of their own from something that has nothing to do with other people, or, you know, taking something wrong that is obviously wrong, then we should know about it and we should fix it.
Yeah.
You know, I might take offense to somebody saying something to me, but when explained to me, I shouldn't take offense to it because it's not done in an offenseful way, or it's a colloquialism that is appropriate, if you know what I'm getting at, or something,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, that I'm taking it wrong. And I'm sure there are people in our community, as Sandy mentioned before, that have their own past that plays into how they may interpret a pronoun or something, and that may have to be, you almost may have to say to them, you got to get over it. That's in your background, not ours. But this committee, if it's doing what it's supposed to do, will say that to them during the committee.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They should be together enough that they shouldn't have a problem telling each other they're wrong if they're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I have no problem saying no if they don't like it.
Yeah. No, I don't either, really. But
Right, neither do you. I know
Yeah.
you don't. That's what I'm saying. And it sometimes you take a little heat for it, but if it, the board is certainly this board is certainly open enough. Have all the respect for all its members to render a decision based upon what they feel is right. And that's all you can do. That's all anybody can ask you to do. And if sometimes they're upset about that, so be it.
if they come back with a recommendation that the Board of Selectmen be racially, ethnically, and vocabulary diverse, go ahead. I'll step aside.
Volunteer.
Find somebody to take my spot, and I'll step aside. That's it. It's just the nature of us. We don't have enough people that, and the people we do have are serving on other boards. So, I'm good with this. I'm happy to learn if I'm wrong in some place.
Right. So I wanted to read this is a quote from Walter Williams to tell you where my brain's coming from. Limiting government is the single most important instrument for guaranteeing liberty. So there lies a wise man, and Dr. Williams was a brilliant guy, and he says a lot there. And that's why I try to gear this thing more towards government than government telling people what to do. I'd rather have them tell us what to do.
All right.
Thank you.
I'd like a motion to accept this resolution as shown on the screen with the changes from the original version now in yellow.
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Mike. Is there a second?
Kim or Bob, would you second it?
No.
I'll second it then. Or Kim, did
I
you
will.
second
I
it?
just couldn't get off mute.
Did you second it, Kim?
I did.
Okay, so it's been moved by Mike Aramita, seconded by Kim Miller. Any further discussion?
I've heard from, may I have a question? Bob, I haven't heard your thoughts on this. I mean, we've heard everyone else. I'm curious, before I make a final decision, your thoughts.
Well, I like what you said originally. I have quite a bit of experience with affirmative action, and don't forget, I taught school in Hartford in all-black North End neighborhood for many years. I have a lot of feelings about this. When our Democratic Town Committee had to come up with a similar resolution, I did a ton of research. And you know what? It all boils down to nothing. It boils down to nothing. Nobody is going to accomplish anything. This is all rhetoric. I'd be very surprised if anything concrete positive comes out of any of this. It has to be starting at home with families, with kids, and their schools can play an important part. But whatever this committee does, I'll go along with it. But I think what you said before, initially, is right on, personally. That's it.
And I'll add to that is in my background, my first year of teaching was in an all-black and Hispanic school in the worst school in the city of Hartford. You know, in that,
And you survived.
and I survived. And hopefully my students did.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of this resolution, please. I'm going to do a roll call. DePietro,
Can I? Yes.
was that an aye?
Yeah.
Thank you. Aramita,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mora,
Yeah, reluctantly, I will go along with the board. I think we modified it enough. I can accept it.
thank you. And the chair votes aye. So that's unanimous. Thank you all. I think we've made some good changes to the proposal, and I'm looking forward to getting this committee appointed. Let's move on to the exciting changes to the finance department manual. These are pretty much housekeeping items. When,
Let me jumping in just for a quick second.
sure, go ahead.
For those of you who were at the subcommittee meeting, you might remember that there was a hypothetical third recommendation that Jill had to share with all of you that was going to be brought forward at this meeting, but we didn't have a chance to talk about it the last meeting. You'll notice that's not here today. Unfortunately, just with some other work that we have going on, Jill wasn't able to get to it. So at some other point, there will be a new recommendation. It's as pressing as these two. But I appreciate you taking a look at these two recommendations and just keep that other one in the back of your mind. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Josh, for that update. This basically addresses the fact that we said purchase orders over $700, which meant we said purchase orders under 700 and purchase orders over 700, leaving 700 exactly not covered by the policy. And wouldn't you know it, we had a purchase order of exactly 700 come through the system. So there was no guidance in our manual to fix it. So this is does make that change. And there's also a recommendation to change purchase order and cancellation so that any purchase order 700 or under will go to directly to the finance department, and excuse me, over 700 would go to Josh for approval.
Okay,
So,
question, that's the one part I had a question on, that last part.
yep,
Okay. So this is the part under 700, any modification of an existing purchase order.
mhm.
How does emergency changes? You know, if obviously a purchase order and an emergency, and then it gets changed and has to be dealt with immediately. Is there a provision somewhere else where they don't have to submit and then have to wait for an approval by the finance department before they can happen? I just don't know. Or should it be there for a case of emergencies? I just bring that up because you know, I didn't have the full thing in front of me to see if somewhere else it deals with, you know, an emergency type issue.
Right. Bob, there isn't something about emergency purchase orders within the policies themselves, and maybe that's something that we, as a next step that we look to add.
I think you should, because that's where everything else, it's routine. I see nothing wrong with doing it the way it makes good sense. There's a nice sequence. In emergency, things happen fast. Decisions are made quickly, and sometimes that can't be, that little administrative portion can't be done. Dealing with the administrator, well, obviously, there's always an administrator that can be contacted. I don't know.
Yeah, there are several things that could possibly come up that I could identify that would be emergency purchase orders of thousands of dollars that would have to be dealt with, or under $700 where you'd actually have to buy something without a purchase order. And we have to have something in the finance rules and regulations about that somewhere.
I do believe that there is an emergency purchase policy. I don't believe that it mentions purchase orders per se.
It just deals with purchases.
Right. I believe it authorizes certain emergency purchases in the event that the first selectman has declared a state of emergency, or the governor, so on and so on. I will check that for you, however, and I will make sure that if there's any room for improvement on that policy, that it's brought forward at the next finance and administration.
Yeah, it may not be here, but somewhere, I think somewhere it should be addressed. So I don't want to put a department head or person in an awkward position where
I'm pretty sure we do have some sort of a emergency purchasing policy, because I can think back over the past year of several instances where something's happened and we needed to get something fixed immediately. So, and we've taken that action. So
I think I agree, but I don't know if it's in the new policies. That's why.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, Bob. We will visit it and revisit it at our next meeting.
Thank you.
The subcommittee, rather.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up. I love people who think for me.
Along those same lines, I have one question, because I thought of this before and we never talked about it. When we had that whole Enrico Road thing, we sort of lucked out, right? That the issue was on the side of the road and therefore people could still get in and out. So we didn't have to deal with it emergency. But that was a very significant expense. If the road had been like unpassable, right? We couldn't leave people trapped. Do we have a plan for something like that? We do. Okay.
We would have stuffed the hole and put a temporary patch on it.
Yeah.
And probably let the water run down the side of the road, which wouldn't have made all the residents happy, but they would have been able to get in and out. Because we've had some of those situations in the past. In other areas where it hasn't been on the side of the road. So
our road could have replaced that pipe with a temporary pipe should they have needed to.
Okay, so we have options and we won't leave people trapped. Okay.
They might be trapped temporarily, but it won't be for very
like
long.
A month. That took us weeks, right? To
road crews on call.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor, actually, do we have a motion to approve these changes to the finance manual?
Not yet.
I'm asking for one.
I'll move it.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mike
I'll
Aramita,
second.
seconded by Kim Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous from visual confirmation. Draft banking RFP. We've been talking for a long time about going out for a request for proposal on a banking services, and we finally have a proposal in place. So Josh, you want to talk about this? Because my voice needs a rest.
So as Sandy said, we've been working on this for quite a while. I believe the question even came up before I was brought on. And we have a draft request for proposals. This is developed by CROG in large part. And as a service to member towns, CROG took a number of different RFPs that were put out for banking services, took the best of components and put together a document that we've gone through. And by we, that initially included myself and our finance director, Jill, and later, of course, included the finance and administration subcommittee. So they've had the chance to look at this twice. And in each go round, we went through and addressed a few different items that needed to be improved, fixed, whatever the case might be. So there was a lot of attention and detail that went into, well, first and foremost, background about the town, as you see there in introduction and intent, number one. In background and overview, we were very careful to make sure that we correctly identified the number of different accounts that we have, the number of services and the kinds of services that we're really looking for and requesting. This is an extremely comprehensive request for proposals. I know it was probably a little daunting to get in your packet today and to have to take a look and digest everything in such a short amount of time, especially for those of you who aren't on the F&A committee. But I believe at this point that there is very little that could be done to make this more comprehensive. The couple of points, most of what we're looking at right now is very technical information. I will note that the Finance and Administration Subcommittee did change the distance from the municipality that the bank must have a branch that can offer full banking services to us. Originally, I believe it had been 15 miles, and we did up it to 25 miles just to make sure that we're able to collect as many proposals as possible to make sure that we're able to opt into the best possible services. But a little bit further down, something that you all might be very interested in is, of course, how we're going to, what information we're going to be collecting, followed by how we're going to be evaluating these different proposals. So preparing a response, we've identified over the course of several pages of very carefully detailed information that they will have to submit to us. There will be a due date that's set. I don't know if you would all like to potentially set that as a board, or we can set it for simply 1 month after Jill and I have the chance to have it posted on the website. But we're requesting plenty of background information, including current users and references, a minimum of 5 current clients that we have permission to reach out to and really have deep conversations with them about what their experience is like. We're asking for a holistic scope of services. We're asking for transition, implementation, and timeline, disaster recovery. There's, like I said, and I could keep going on forever. There's a lot that goes into this. And at the end of the day, we do have a short rubric that we'll be using. And I'm sorry if I'm making any of you dizzy as I scroll down here. A short rubric here towards the end of the RFP that identifies the fact that there are some minimum requirements that we've detailed in this document that need to be either met or they're not, and that's a pass-fail test. They have to submit to us a non-collusion statement. That means, of course, that they shouldn't be reaching out to you, that they shouldn't be contacting other banks in an effort to try and get more money out of us or somehow game the proposal system. And then there are a set of weights that have been assigned, and this is all based on CROG's recommendations, a set of weights that have been assigned to the different components of the proposals that we receive. Obviously, a larger weight has been assigned to things like fees and the approach to which they will be handling us, the customer service that they're going to be providing, but also giving some weight to quality references and there's a good word for it that I think I'm missing here, but an overall strength of the proposal and the experience that they provide for us. So I believe that this proposal, this RFP is ready to go out and we're ready to requests, or we're ready to receive these proposals and really dive through them. I know that Jill will be thrilled to get moving on the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Do you have any anticipation of, number of institutions you're looking to have come in?
I think we can expect our current
Mm-hmm.
banking relationship to repropose, I think, and we actually currently have, I believe, two banking relationships. One for most of our deposit accounts and another for our investment accounts, because Jill is very conscious of maximizing interest rates on long-term deposits. So I expect they would also propose, and I'm also aware of at least two other banks who have reached out to us and said, if you ever go out for proposal, we'd like to bid. So I'm hoping at least three, perhaps four.
Okay, thank you.
And I would tell you that Jill, Josh, and I believe that there are significant opportunities for service improvements.
Well, that's a given.
So I think we can do this one by consensus. I don't, because it is an RFP. We aren't going, we aren't awarding the bid at this point. So I would like, with consensus, to give Josh the authority to issue when they are ready, and to set with Jill the response time, being aware that we are going to be involved in budget season very quickly, but we also want to be in a position to make this switch not at the cutover of our fiscal year. So are there any objections to that
No.
consensus?
No.
No.
Bob DiPietro, Kim Miller, any objections? Bob saying no. I don't know. I think we've temporarily lost Kim. Oh,
Nope,
there she
I'm
is.
there. Sorry.
No objections?
No objections. Nope.
Okay. Okay, Josh, this is on you. Let us know when you've got some proposals to evaluate, and we'll help you evaluate.
Got it.
Moving on, cemetery services.
And I can speak to this as well, Sandy.
Please.
Very much in the same line as the RFP for banking services. And actually, some of you who are on the subcommittee will note that towards the end of this RFP, I have added a little language that I think just strengthens some of the requirements that we might ask of individuals who are submitting proposals, and all of this language is taken from that banking RFP. But essentially, this is a proposal, or this is a request, I should say, for proposals. And we are looking to have potentially two different types of proposals come in. We've outlined the first 4 service requirements that are really tailored towards sexton services, and making sure that we have somebody who's available to us, who can dig graves, who can really help us with that side and the technical equipment that goes with it. And then we have a second set of services that have been broken out, 5, 6, and 7 here, that are really aimed at providing landscaping services for the cemeteries. I did speak with John Butchermovich, and I did already share this fact with members of the subcommittee that reviewed this. And it's his opinion that we have an opportunity to take the buildings and grounds, the members of the buildings and grounds department that we have now, and we could do a decent job of keeping up the landscaping at these 2 sites. I believe that he thinks, in the summer especially, that might keep the group a little thin, and that they would really have to hustle and pick up the pace and make sure that they're able to cover all of their duties that they're doing now and try and add in quite a bit of detailed work. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to go for here with these services, is making sure that everything's carefully done, is done with respect. So by asking for all of the different firms that might respond to this RFP to section these two types of proposals out, the sexton services and the landscaping services, we have an opportunity to take those all to look at the different fees and the costs that are associated with making use of both kinds of services and making an educated decision on should we be going forward with having our own buildings and grounds crew conduct landscaping services, or is it worth the money to have another crew come in that is contracted, that we can always say, you know what, we're bowing out of this contract, who can spend a little bit more time perhaps than our crew. Obviously, there are going to be cost savings if we do choose to eventually go with our crew, but this gives us the greatest number of options possible.
Mhm.
There are a number of different proposal requirements that we ask to be submitted. It's not quite as detailed as the banking RFP. There are fewer services to be covered in the RFP process for this, as opposed to a very nuanced and technical banking RFP. But we are making sure that we're being comprehensive, that all of the proposals that are submitted are going to get us the information that we want. And effectively, we're hoping to have a similar timeline to the banking services. We are hoping to be able to take on, if needed, and we're hoping to be able to take on a new, especially sexton service as soon as this spring and summer.
Josh,
Yes.
there was one other thing that John mentioned, and that was the mower, needing a smaller mower of zero turn type to use in the cemeteries, and that would be what, 12 to 15,000 or 10 to 15 or something like that.
Yeah, he said somewhere in the range of 10 to 15,000. I haven't had the chance to follow up with him about the possibility of getting something used, something that might be a little bit more or a little bit cheaper. I believe he had quoted us for 15 on the dot.
Yeah, but that's a one-time investment. I mean, that'll last you for years if properly maintained, and these guys do
Right.
that. And I think the other side of that issue too is summertime, it's the trim work is what's time consuming, and we hire all kinds of part-time folks in the summertime. If you had to hire additional part-time person, I think that cost would be considerably less than what a full-time service group might charge you, and have a lot more control on the quality of work that's there. So, but those are things, obviously, I'm glad you put that in a proposal, because these are things that we can look at once we get them back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think it's important to point out that bidders will be asked to propose on items 1 through 4 or items 1 through 7, which includes the landscaping, and we will not accept proposals for just landscaping.
Right. Good.
So again, if there is no objection to this, I'd like to turn this over to Josh to administer and come back to us with the subcommittee with recommendations for approval, and to set his own response time. Mike
Okay.
gave a thumbs up. Bob Mora, Bob DiPietro are nodding. Kim Miller, are you nodding as
Yep.
well? Okay,
I'm
great.
good.
Thank you. All right. Town hall facility expansion, finally. Okay, Josh.
All right. So 3 of you did hear this presentation yesterday. So I will try and be brief, but comprehensive as well.
And Skylar wrote a decent article for tonight's JI as well. So thank
That's
you,
excellent.
Skylar.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Skylar. So we have engaged with UConn and specifically UConn's engineering department. They have 4 students who, out of my understanding, is dozens of different ideas that were brought forward to them by their professors, They decided that they were most interested in helping us further our town hall expansion project. So it's a 1 year long project that they're really working on. It's their senior capstone. And their first semester, they took a look at the existing footprint of town hall, had the chance to talk with many members of our staff, not just the three primary contacts have been myself, Patrice Carson, and Jim Rupert, but many others as well. And they've been given a list of different items that they need to consider, not necessarily binding or holistic. I think there's a lot of room for changes as we go forward and as the subcommittee discussed yesterday. But they were given a list of, for example, different employees that need to be able to fit in there, a list of the different challenges that we're going to face. And they had the chance to come and do a very short and socially distanced site walk to try and get a better understanding of what it is that they're dealing with. So again, in their first semester, they really took a look at the basic principles of what the type of expansion needs to be for town hall, what our hopes are for it. And they have come forward with 3 different ideas of where an expansion could be done on the current town hall property in order to be able to accommodate for the increased space that we're hoping to see. And in the second semester, once we give them some direction, a way in which to go, they will be coming up with more specific schematics, really getting down into the nitty-gritty of the nuance of the project. So I'll walk you through 3 different alternatives that they've come up with, and they're called alternatives, but really just 3 different ideas that they've had for expansion. And on the slide in front of you, you'll see a picture. Anything that appears to be wood floorboards, that's of course the current footprint of town hall, and it's a pretty recognizable shape. And actually I can use my cursor, I just realized to show you this. Up above it, you'll see a yellow box, and this is the new footprint that they're proposing. Do note that in all of these pictures, they're not 3-dimensional. So there are some proposals that are potentially 2 stories or coming up an extra floor, but you won't necessarily see that in the visuals that are on the screen. This is really just to give you an idea of where the footprint of any expansion is going to be. So what they're calling alternative number 1, the retrofit, has 2 floors. They're projecting it would be about 3,120 square feet per floor. It would allow for additional meeting rooms, offices, and it would create a hurricane/tornado safe room on the first floor that would be able to operate as the emergency coordination center. They believe that with any of these different proposals, there is a distinct possibility that the Army Corps of Engineers will have to be involved as a result of the fact that there's so much wetland behind town hall, and Army Corps has to get involved once a certain number of square feet of wetland will be disturbed. This is probably the least disruptive proposal for as far as the wetland goes, but a CTD permit would be required in any case. And you can see a couple other images down here on this subject. So really this idea is simply attaching more space to the immediate back of town hall. I believe that there was a proposal in this similar vein in the past, and there would have to be a few logistical things worked out, including how parking and how drive space would be able to or would continue to be managed and where it would go. But this is their first thought. And unless, please feel free to jump in and stop me if you have questions, but otherwise, roll through.
And that would disrupt the entire, your septic system would not, you couldn't exist with the current the system is at its peak now. You would have to build that community septic system over by the, where we had planned on it. That's another, well, no matter what happens, there's a $250,000, $300,000 cost that we're gonna have to deal with, but that should always be considered in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have said this at the beginning, but a couple caveats that we did, or a couple parameters that we gave the students. The first was that we wanted to have this be in some way at least walkable to town hall. The 3 different designs that you're seeing today are on the town hall lot itself, so they definitely took that to heart. Not all of them are immediately connected, as you'll see, but we'll get to that in just a second. But I do think, right, there are some added costs with any kind of development that's going to happen in town center as a result of the septic, as a result of parking and drive-through
Right.
design. And none of these designs really have to be seen through to fruition past the student's project. I'm hopeful that this will help us springboard and maybe be able to take some schematics to an architect come the summer and for us to really be able to move something forward. But in the event that we walk this forward and by May, everyone on this board says, yeah, that's not what we're looking for, that's okay too.
Well, I think too, what it does, Josh, it does identify a more realistic view of total needed square footage. And all these things that you're going to have a total square footage that's going to be needed to quote operate. That's what they're coming up with, right? That based on all the discussions with personnel and everything else. So I think whether we think any of these particular things work, I think one important thing guarantee will come out of this will give us I think a more real idea of the square footage we need. Because if you have an architect do that's got a fee behind it, you know it's going to be 20% larger than what you really need. And here you have a student that's doing what you want them to do and to be give you efficient things. So I think no matter what, we will come out with some good stuff out of this thing for us to use. I don't mean to interrupt, but
That's great. Absolutely.
I'm done.
Feel free to interrupt. Alternative number 2 that they've identified is they've titled it the seclusion. And this is also potential for 2 floors with 3,200 square feet on each floor, with a hurricane and tornado safe room on the first floor, additional offices and meeting rooms existing on both of the first and second new floors. It would be an independent building that has the potential for a courtyard and green space to be added either somewhat in the middle of the building or between the 2 buildings. It helps keep the historic aspect of the original town hall as it exists now. It would be fully built in the wetlands, however, and there would be no way to get around Army Corps approval in this case. We might be able to squeak by in the first alternative, but in the second one, it likely would not be possible. But here are a couple other images of the seclusion as it's titled. And the third concept is the expansion, as they've referred to it. And this has 2 floors again. It adds an additional 6,200 square feet, just over that. And you can see that there's a component of the expansion that's added on to, well, on the screen here, the leftmost wing of the building. But then there is actually a connected bridge on the second floor that would allow individuals from the old town hall building to be able to travel to the new building over drive-through traffic and be able to access that in a handicap accessible manner. It would also require Army Corps approval unless you really shrank that footprint back in the wetlands. This does allow for, I think, more. There was a concern potentially on number 2 that was voiced yesterday about individuals having to walk between the 2 buildings. And I think that there was a lot of discussion around perhaps making the new building on number 2 large enough that all staff could be able to make use of that space and that you wouldn't need to be traveling between the 2 buildings quite as much. But number 3 obviously tries to address that with that small footbridge covered, of course.
Josh,
buildings.
getting into the discussion on the seclusion, the expansion project number 2
Yes.
that we talked about yesterday. At least what I put forward was I wanted to keep our existing town hall as an existing historical town hall. And at least in my observation and from other people yesterday, there is really no efficient, usable work workable office space in our existing building. We're dealing with the fireplace room that was subdivided into a couple of offices with no ceilings on them. We've got the building inspector who basically is in a hallway between the town clerk and a stairway. We've got the town clerk with a vault that's got way too much in it, needs to be replaced or added onto, and really not an efficient area there because you're getting sworn in and all kinds of things and people are walking behind you and everything. So at least in my opinion, our town hall has no viable office space in the 21st century, so to speak. And if we kept our existing town hall in this as 3 meeting rooms, the fireplace room, the main room, and the town clerk's area, and potentially using something in the tax collectors downstairs for something else, and moving everything else to the other building for efficient, usable office space. This was the approach that I liked the best. And the only thing that has come to mind to me since yesterday and thinking about the Army Corps and DEP and wetlands and everything is the fact that that building could be built on the site of the current Notch Road Center if we got into a position where we couldn't get through the DEP and Army Corps red tape, so to speak.
Michael, you'd also, if you check the wetland, if you check the soils map I did today on the Prestito property, if you go to the north, you'll find that both the soil types there are non-wetland soils, though there might be some issues. So you literally could put that building 400 feet away within walking distance. So you could have a campus down there. I mean, that's something that could be looked at as this is happening, just to check the soils and see whether or not it's a possibility, because it's a freestanding building, basically where you put it. And in the same time, again, if you did it here, whoever on there, you would have that same. I think it should be in this area only because it helped us accomplish the goal of putting that community septic system in. It helps the library, what's now the troopers things, and certainly without that, anything we may want to do with Heritage Farm needs that capability. That's why I if we can, if it can be put on somewhere in that area, something to look at. But
that would be fine with me.
Yeah, but I agree what you have to say about utilizing the town hall space. We can make some really great meeting space there.
Right, but it serves no real useful 21st century function as offices.
No.
And I think the subcommittee yesterday felt that the seclusion option was likely our best option, and that to increase the space for some potential expansion in the future, taking the C shape or U shape and making it more of a square with a no frills sort of Yankee frugal exterior, not a lot of glass, but and not a lot of shiny stainless steel. We could probably do this for and maybe I'm dreaming, but for a more acceptable to the taxpayer price tag.
Well, your per square foot cost is going to be, if you go square versus that, your per square foot cost goes down.
Right.
Exactly.
It goes down versus any addition. So yeah, no matter dollar per, it is your most economical way, I think, to move forward as well. I agree.
Yeah,
we thought on the board's part.
We talked heavily about I hate to use the word because we just talked about diversity and inclusion, but a plain Jane building, if you know what I'm getting at. You know, Something, you know, if I'm spending my money, I can build whatever I want. But if I'm spending everybody's money, I have to be, I want it to be a good
Yankee
building that
frugal.
works. Yep. Yankee frugal. It's got to work,
There you
but it
go.
doesn't have to be fancy.
And it can be done.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, we took a lot of your steam away.
So
Well, that's
can I ask a
exactly what
question?
happened. That's what happened yesterday.
Okay.
So how
ahead,
much
Kim.
square footage do we have in the current town hall? Like, is that doubling it? Is it what?
That's a good question. And of course, I'm at my home, unfortunately, and I don't have the file right.
Well, you got to remember, Kim, you also you have to factor in the space you're going to be losing out of the
Not
old
true.
municipal center, the meeting space and the office space is there. So
Right.
yeah, you'll need, I think the 6,500 square, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And with the 2-story, with a basement, you'll create the other thing that's needed is that storage area.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That you'd be getting rid of over at the municipal center. And then looking at the existing town hall, with the 2 vaults there, you have an off-site backup. You should have an off-site storage facility for your record storage backup. Don't you have, it's in, you got a perfect setup there. The vaults are there.
Okay.
So the ultimate goal here is to recommend to the students which option we would like them to consider. And the recommendation of the subcommittee was to take alternative 2, square it off, and proceed with that option.
Yeah. With a full basement. I don't think anything, they didn't mention anything here on basements. That's what I was wondering. They may have been considering slab versus basement, or.
That's a question I don't know the answer to, but it's certainly something we can ask them to
Josh,
look at.
He can pass that along.
I can pass it along, certainly. And if
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they're going to look at that, they might as well look at what our not wish list, but I think our practically what we really would like to come out after looking at all this and said and done. And I think a full basement should be considered too.
With the ground, the terrain there, the way it slopes off, to have a first floor at driveway level, you'd have to have a full basement under it with a walkout in the back, which would
back
be
there,
perfect.
Yeah. If you move it up, yeah, even if you move it up, because the Corps of Engineers will give you a hell of a issue there. If you move it north away from that area, you have some pretty good slopes, south and north to south sloping. I think you could work a good basement there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you got places to run curtain drains and drain things out.
Yeah.
And
other thoughts that
how
come
much
up-
of a problem? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, the whole thing about the building on the wetlands and the getting the Army Corps approval, like, is that realistic? Or, like, I thought you could not build on wetlands.
Well, no, you can. But see, there's an intermittent water course in that area. That's the real key issue in behalf of the town hall. It's not that the wetlands issue so much. You can deal with that because are they critical wetlands? Are they not? There's varying degree of wetlands, and you can also create somewhere else some additional wetlands to offset. You can do offsetting. There's things you can do on wetlands. Water courses, that's the Corps of Engineers. That is, not only is it tough, it is procedurally takes you for freaking ever.
Okay.
But if you were able to go further up and not have to deal with Corps of Engineers, but merely with wetland issues, those are issues that can be dealt with, and a good engineer can do that.
And actually, the intermittent water course is at that point not close to
Right.
the,
To where you would
this
have to go.
proposed location. And
Right.
if it could be moved slightly north to
Yeah.
the further into the Pastrito property, we
Yeah.
get even further from that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So
So then I'll just say one other thing about the, I do like having the angled versus the box. So take this for what it's worth. But when we were building our house, we had talked to the builder because we were running over budget about like sort of smoothing out some of the angles that we have because we have a lot of angles. And he said, yeah, it costs a little more, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So I just, other people might know more than I do, but that was just what our builder said.
Well, where it makes a difference is the more, if you, not square, but rectangle gives you more in the interior. It gives you a lot more versatility in how you do your offices into a breakout.
Mhm.
That's where it would make, where it probably would make a difference.
So would you say that the line would just go straight and it would close out that courtyard, so that would all be offices? Or would it be, you're just taking the fact that it's 6,400 square feet and making that 6,400 square feet of a box, so it'll be smaller in like
Well, that's,
footprint?
yeah, I think
yeah,
I would leave that to the students, but my vision is that the C would become more of flatter,
Rectangle.
but not necessarily square.
right. No, I don't see a
Okay.
square. No. You can have a rectangle.
So, all right. I don't think at this point, because we are just talking about proposals, we need a motion. But I would like to ask for consensus for asking the students to proceed with option 2.
Mm-hmm. With the input we've given them.
Yep, Mike's got his thumbs up. I'm assuming that's a Bob Mora thumbs up. Bob DePietro is nodding yes. Kim's nodding thumbs up, and that's my approach as well. So thank you. Josh, I think you've got your marching orders there.
Thank you.
Speed sensing signs. This is some good news. Josh, you want to share?
Yes, and what you see in front of you is an agreement that we have signed with the T2 Center.
Actually, we don't see it.
Oh,
I was going to say
I'm
that.
sorry.
Is it just me?
I'm sorry. I paused my sharing about 5 minutes ago and I never unpaused it. I just realized that.
Okay.
But so now in front of you, you see an agreement with the T2 Center, which is based out of Yukon. And they have been working with a number of smaller towns. It seems like predominantly in Eastern Connecticut so far, but I think they're trying to get a couple of these signs to every municipality. And they have provided to us at no cost 2 speed sensing signs. And I'm not really sure if there's a better technical term for that. But these are signs that are placed underneath speed limit signs, and they record different vehicles as they go by and transmit data about how fast they're going to a centralized database. And it also reflects back to the individual going by how fast they're going. So the purpose is twofold. First and foremost, we get to collect data about where some of our major speed issues are, and that can help our law enforcement officers better patrol and have an understanding of where the key issues are in town. But it will also help individuals in real time understand that they're either above or below the posted speed limit, and hopefully they'll become a little bit more conscious and adjust as they're driving.
These are solar powered?
They are solar powered, so the solar panel attaches right to the top of the sign.
Okay.
All,
Yeah.
Centrally connected. So we are ready to go. We have already had these dropped off to us. They are at the town garage right now. But in order to put them up, as you can see in this agreement, in order to have the signs posted on a state road, we do have to have a DOT permit. And as you might all remember from the welcome signs, that can take a little bit of time. I'd like to have some input from all of you, at least first and foremost, if there are any town roads that you would really like to, where you'd like to see these posted?
I think you're gonna have to move them around. A few weeks in one, because, so they have an effect for a short period of time. So,
Right.
and really, this is your residents that you're trying to impact. So they gotta see where they're, how fast they're going. A couple of weeks in one spot or a few weeks and move them to a few other spots. So, you may wanna just pick some of your major roads initially and then move them around. Because everybody's gonna want one. And Sandy, you must have a list of people who say, put a resident trooper on my road and put a speed trap up.
Oh, yeah. That changes hourly.
Yeah, well, I thought as much. So you may just want to, you may want to speak with the resident trooper to get some suggestions. He may have, he too may have some suggestions of, between
Josh,
Andy and you can probably work out.
Yeah, didn't T2 Center give us some suggested locations?
Yes, I asked them for their top 3. They had hinted that they had 3 locations identified that were of top concern for them. So I asked them what they were for Bolton, and they said that the greatest number of speed-related crashes occurred in the, they said 5 years on Notch Road, Steele's Crossing Road, and Quarry Road were their top 3 concerns for town-controlled roads.
Notch Road.
Steels, Notch, and what else?
Quarry.
Notch, Steele's, and Quarry.
Yeah, they're all at the intersections with state roads. So having a speed
Yeah.
limit doesn't do squat.
Right.
I was just going to say that it's not. They probably aren't speed related.
Even roads, a main road, that one they fly. South Road's a main road, they fly there.
Yep.
Hebron Road, they fly
Right.
Yep. Both
down
center.
Fish Farm in front of Fish
Starter
Farm.
roads. If you
Yeah.
want to start with those, there's a couple of good starter roads.
Yeah, Bolton Center Road,
Yeah,
the town portion of it past the firehouse
right.
Yep.
and down the hill.
And one of these days too, you gotta hit Brandy Street around the schools, because they freaking, well, like Sandy can tell you how fast. they
Yeah,
fly.
I don't want to be first because, but the other thing that can become a problem with these is if we put them on a long straightaway, I'm afraid of kids using them as test my speedometer.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say kids, I mean drivers of all ages
Yeah, right.
under test my speedometer, but that'll be a job for the troopers.
Yep.
So I can certainly work with Lance, and I've been taking down a number of the roads that you've mentioned so far, and we can just work to rotate them every couple of weeks, couple of months. I do think that probably having them there for at least a month will help us get maybe more consistent, or maybe help us at least measure the impact that they're having and how long that impact really lasts. But I agree that moving them around is probably an ideal thing. If you'd like, Lance and I can manage this and we can move them around as needed. But if you have very specific requests, we're happy to accommodate.
Josh, I think perhaps a volunteer my road option on the website might be the best way to get resident feedback that they want their neighborhood next. But I would also reach out to the suggest you reach out to the T2 Center to see what their recommendation is for length of time for data collection purposes.
I would think, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would think you and Bruce probably have a good idea where more accidents happen. No?
Well, I've got a lot of accidents in my brain that are coming to mind when I think of these. And, we had significant accidents on Camp Meeting Road. We've had significant accidents on Cider Mill Road. We've had significant accidents on Steele's Crossing and Route 6. Where else have we had some fairly significant
Most
accidents?
of the intersections with the state roads.
Right. Loomis and Hebron is a biggie.
Yeah.
School in Hebron, we've had some accidents there. Most of those seem to be at the time of school. You know, they seem to be with kids and people going the other way as they go to school. But we've had some fairly significant accidents in the off times there. I would recommend, like in front of St. Maurice's Church, going towards Town Hall, over the crest of the hill by Pease Farm, going the other way down the hill.
Well, that's definitely,
You know, as Sandy mentioned, after the firehouse, heading the straightaway towards Fish Farm and John Treat's house that way.
yep.
Well, those are state roads.
State roads.
Oh, that's a state road. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what?
You know,
What?
we could, you know, there are enough places we can start for sure, and get permission, you know, start asking for permission for a couple of spots on state roads.
Yeah, because
And
we
get it.
right. It'll take a year to get permission, but by then we would have done our roads. We can.
Right. You know, so we'll start by asking permission and putting them in a few spots around town. You know, most of our accidents seem to be in intersections, and that's probably not the best place for that. You know, it's,
Well, you're not going to be able to stop at an intersection if you're speeding 300
Right.
yards down the road.
right. You know, there are places, you know, I hate to pick myself out, but I find myself occasionally going a little too fast down past Pieces, and, you know, going the other way past Herrick Park. I find myself coming up over the hill sometimes going a little too fast. And, you know, there are other places, you know, School Road is, what is it, 25 or 35 miles an hour? And I rarely see myself below 35 there, you know. And so there are places where, if you wanted to catch me, you know, there's places around town where I could use a little helping hand and reminding me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Fish Farm for me.
Yep.
definitely, definitely.
So we've added a lot of things to Josh's to-do list tonight. So I don't believe we have any other. Is that correct? All right. As far as COVID-19, we are, as of today, at 128 cases, which means that we have tripled our case count since October 30th. So in 2 short months, basically 9 weeks, we have tripled our case count. So most of the spread seems to be through community or workplace. And by community, I mean neighborhood/family. And workplace is the number 2 spread. So somebody gets it in their workplace, brings it home, spreads it through the family. So all I can do is urge people to continue to use the precautions, wear your mask when you're not in your own space. I wear mine around my neck, so I've always got it with me. Wash your hands, keep your socially distance if you can't when you go out. Bob DiPietro has his that he's wearing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do need assistance from the fire department, reach out to them. Don't hesitate, dial 911, but be honest with the dispatcher if you think you're showing symptoms so that our first responders can take the necessary precautions they need to keep you safe and themselves safe in that instance. And with that, Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cindy. As you, I believe, are all aware at this point, speaking to some of the administrators' goals that were set earlier in this fiscal year, we do now have a date for diversity training. That date is January 19th and it's going to be held from 9 a.m. to noon. It is via Zoom. I hope that you're all able to attend and that you're able to jump on that call. I know
What date is that?
January 19th,
Okay.
I believe it's a Wednesday. It's not next Wednesday. It's not a week from tomorrow, but 2 weeks from tomorrow.
The 19th is a Tuesday.
Do I have that wrong? Yes, you're
Okay,
right.
so what time? What
So
time?
actually, it's 2 weeks from today, and it's from 9 a.m. to noon.
Okay.
It's being hosted by KJR Consulting. Kenya Rutland will be hosting that for us, and it will be via Zoom. So you'll be able to access it from your work or the comfort of your own home or whatever the case might be. But I believe I sent to all of you the link. I will send it again between now and then, probably a couple times, just to make sure that you definitely have it. And you'll be joined by all of the members of the town's leadership team. So all of the different department directors, as well as Kathy and Gary and a couple others. Chief Dixon, I know, will be on it, and a few others as well. So I hope that you're all excited and invigorated about that. I think that having this kickoff around the same time as the diversity committees getting together is probably a good thing, and hopefully we can spur some ideas from us that we can pass along to the committee of what they can take a look at and really consider. As far as the Four-Town Economic Vitality Group goes, we have now had 2 meetings. They've been pretty high level. They've been really looking at kind of the 40,000 foot view of what it is we need to do rather than starting to get into the nitty gritty. We are still in the process of considering an official name for the group, for example, and we're talking about a timeline for a more regional brand or campaign, getting social media items together so that we can start to actually act as one cohesive group rather than simply just be forever 4 different towns that came together. So it's a slow process, but as we get into this new year, Patrice, Sandy, and I will be on those calls, and we'll be starting to document the different subcommittee opportunities that come up. I know that Bob DePietra already has expressed some interest in serving on 1 or more of those. And the offer is certainly open to anybody else who wants to jump in, whether it's for anything and everything that might come up, or if it's for something very specific that's near and dear to your heart. If you know of other people in the community who are looking for a way to get involved and they have particular interests, this might be a great way to kick off that community connection. So I'll leave it at that for now. I will put more detail into an update this Friday and an email out to all of you. But I know it's getting late, so I won't keep you all up longer than that.
Any other items from any other member of the Board of Selectmen?
Just
Maura?
one question. It has to do with our budget hearings. As to, I'm assuming everything's going to be virtual, and you're going to send out a proposed.
Yes.
schedule, how we're going to do it.
Yes, I will tell you that I'm a little bit more behind than I was hoping to be at this point, but by the end of this week, you should have a preliminary budget document to take a look at. Then I believe is it next week that we're having our first?
I think it's the 3rd week in
I
January.
think it's the 3rd
I
week.
think
Yeah.
it's far out. You had it, yeah.
Right, right. It's the 3rd Tuesday. So actually, in the morning, I'll see you all for diversity training, and that evening we'll have our first budget hearing. So that would be the 19th.
Okay.
And I will also, when I give you a draft of the budget, you'll also have, the full schedule and an understanding of which budget you'll be looking at each night.
Okay. I just, I've forgotten when we had these things. I just wanted to bring it up so I could, rattle my memory.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Josh and Sandy, I have one thing that I remember, Josh, I asked you to put on the agenda for tonight, the 5% match with the, I'm submitting a assistance to firefighters grant again this year, trying to get some money for us.
And I'm sorry it's not on, Mike.
What?
I'm sorry it's not on the agenda, but you're very right. And I will also say that
It's not a problem. The grant does not have to be in. It was late this year. It just opened up Monday. It does not have to be in until February 12th. So we should be able to have a meeting prior to that. I will just, as I'm doing the grant, say that we approved it, because I'm sure we will approve a 5% match out of some kind of funding somewhere. If we should happen to get $150,000, I'm sure we'd have no problem matching 5% of that. So I'll just fill it out with the assumption of that. And if you want, we can vote on it then. If it's possible to put it on tonight, we could do it tonight, but I don't know whether it's not feasible to add it to the agenda at this point.
It is a regular meeting. It's a possibility.
And we do have ongoing business, other,
Okay.
and new business, others. So if you'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve me submitting a grant with the assistance to firefighters, which could have a 5% match. And I don't anticipate it being more than 7,500, but depending on what happens, it could go to 15,000. So because there's other things that are available this year through the assistance to firefighters grant that I may be able to latch into. So if we can get an approval for that, I'd really appreciate it.
I second that. I second it.
So it's been moved and seconded. Mike, I'd just like a clarification. The 7,500 or the 15,000 are the equivalent of the 5% match, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Yvonne, if you could make sure the minutes reflect that in the motion. That
Yep.
the 75 or 15, let's say up to 15,000 for the 5% match.
That should be the way at the other end of the spectrum, but it clears me if I happen to get into a few more things that we might be eligible for.
And if we get lucky and they actually help us pay for them, that would be awesome.
Yes, that would be real
Okay.
nice.
Any further discussion on the motion that was made by Mike and seconded by Bob DiPietro? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That's unanimous. All right. Anything else from anybody else?
One last thing, could Josh stay on so I could show him something at the end?
Sure.
Hey, I was going to call him today, but I want to be able to show him, and I can show him via the Zoom. Josh, and I don't care if other people hear me. If we're done with you can make a motion to adjourn first.
I'll move the adjourn.
All right. Second,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.